Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so happy you're tuning in today. My guest today is Sara Vatore. Sara is a former high school guidance counselor turned entrepreneur, and I couldn't be more excited to have this opportunity to talk with her today about some things that plague entrepreneurs no matter what business they're in. Things like overwhelm, burnout, and wellness as it pertains to our business success, which I think is really overlooked. Sara is both a somatic coach and a peak performance coach. She works with leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, performers, and busy humans, as she likes to say. In her work, she helps people overcome blocks and fears, embody confidence, and access their full potential. So welcome to the show, Sara.
Oh, what a beautiful intro. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm happy to have you today. And I think it's so interesting. I love hearing from people too that have changed careers. So you were a high school guidance counselor that went off on this whole new path. So I want to talk a little bit about your backstory and what made you interested in this particular type of coaching.
Sure. So when I stepped into the guidance counseling role at my first high school where I was employed, I immediately was overwhelmed with it being a system and taken quite by surprise. It was not what I had been anticipating in some of the politics and the dynamics within it. And so I, from the get-go, had this feeling that something wasn't quite right about it. And I have always been sort of more of a type A perfectionist, very driven overachiever. And I jumped, feet head first, the whole gamut into my role at the school and significantly burnt myself out. I was working insane hours. I was up late answering emails so that I didn't have to open my inbox to 50 emails the next day. And there was one moment where I was writing, my fifth letter of recommendation for a senior at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I thought to myself, wow, like what could happen if I put all this effort and attention and energy into my own thing? And that kind of planted the seed for me to really remove myself from the school. I took a medical leave because I was navigating a lot of autoimmune illness and chronic pain in my body, which is a sign and symptom of burnout and overwhelm. And I paused the school to sort of take care of that and then step into my own thing. And I never looked back. And my father was a peak performance consultant. And so he had always said to me, why don't you come work with me? And so that's sort of my entrance into peak performance coaching. He had been a mentor of mine and I studied a somatic training that he implements. So I immediately was able to start to take clients when I left the school and start my own practice.
So if I'm understanding you, you had a very personal reason for going into the line of coaching that you did. And I know that we're aware that it's damaging our health, damaging our bodies, but we don't often know to what extent until, I like to say, the universe gives us a slap down sometimes.
Yes, for sure.
And that's how we find out we have to change things up. Now, I think everyone understands peak performance coaching. I do want to talk about that, but somatic coaching, sure. I'm betting there are a lot of people are not as familiar with that. So give them a brief explanation of how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So somatic, soma means body. So somatic coaching is helping people understand how their bodies are showing up and how their unconscious patterning within their nervous system and within their connective tissue system is showing up. And so I work a lot with people who are navigating fear or negative thinking and doubts, and who are having blocks, who are getting sick, who are feeling stressed out. And in a somatic coaching relationship, you're learning how your unique nervous system is wired and how it's designed to naturally help us have really productive cycles. And we're learning how to harness those cycles and how to heal some of the overriding that we've done, like our whole lives. And also we're repairing all the overriding that our ancestors have done in various ways, because we carry patterns in our bodies from our ancestors as well. So we're holding our own issues and we're holding the issues of our parents and other generations. And so in somatic coaching, we're learning how to repattern the body, rewire the body, so that we can really be aligned with how we want to feel and be in the world.
Now, I think all entrepreneurs go through periods where they have all of those things you just talked about. So, and you mean we don't have to have those? Gee,
Yes.
what a thought.
Yeah.
I can see where that totally goes all together, but I do think on some level entrepreneurs just go, oh, well, it's the way it is. I have to do this, or even whether you're even athletes. I had an athlete not that long ago on the show who was an NFL player for a time. And he talked about my body was good. You can train your body, but there are so many other pieces that go into all of this. And I know from one of my first memories of anyone talking about peak performance and athletes was, of course, Tony Robbins. Yeah. Tony was like coaching everybody. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And we're all going, yeah, I'm sure all those people over there can do it, but I'm not so sure about me.
Yeah.
So did you initially work with leadership type people, entrepreneurs or athletes? Did you have someone you picked, or was it all of them at once?
Yeah, so my work has definitely evolved and developed over the years. Initially, because my father was so well known, I was just very fortunate and lucky to have a steady stream of referrals coming through. And so those were all athletes. So I work a lot with divers and gymnasts and figure skaters and equestrian sports where it's generating real biological fear in a body, right? We're not designed as mammals to flip and twist on a teeny tiny little thing. And there's a high level of injury and trauma in those sports. So that tends to generate a lot of blocks and fear. So those tended to be the clients that I started with right away. And then over time, I have 2 websites. Over time, I really started to develop out more working with leaders and space holders. I have taught in life coach trainings, working with entrepreneurs and coaches who are working with other bodies, other humans, so that they can manage their own negative thinking and doubts as they're, in a session with someone or in a business meeting or putting themselves out on the stage or on a live Facebook or Instagram and having a lot of fear. So that started to develop after the athlete piece for me was sort of well grooved. And that's really my passion. I get a steady flow of athletes coming in, and I love working with athletes. And my passion is really helping entrepreneurs who feel burnt out or stressed out or have fear of putting themselves out there, because we need everybody showing up in their fullest expression of self. And I really believe this can be done without overwhelm and without burnout.
Awesome. I think everyone's looking for the magic button when it comes to fear. And I have found the only way to really do that is just to do it anyway. And then there's a certain element of that. Let's say you want to. I remember a long time ago when I made my very first video, somebody said, a colleague said, would you make me a 15-minute training video on whatever it was? And I said, sure. They were going to put that out to their audience. And I can remember it taking me like a day and a half to make a 15-minute video. And I just finally went, whatever, yeah. I'm done, because it wasn't a natural thing. But there is something to be said about, you start to believe in yourself for one thing, if you actually get it done. But I don't know, is there an easy button to some of this that people don't have to suffer as they do all of these uncomfortable things?
Yeah, what a great question. So the easy button I wouldn't necessarily call easy, but from my lens, it's really learning how your nervous system works, because there are very clear cycles that our body goes through, and our nervous system communicates to us through sensation. We get increased heart rate, our breathing gets shallow, our muscles get tight, we get a bunch of negative thoughts or worried thoughts, or we start to be in a sorting and sifting and problem solving mode. And so when we can learn how our body is designed and worked, we can really help it start to settle. So when we have fear, it's a way that our body is showing us that there's danger. And I'm going to put danger in quotes. And danger now is fear of failure, fear of making a mistake, not being good enough, of looking silly. And so that really is a physical response in our body. Lots of times people think, oh, I can just suck it up and do it anyways. And sometimes we can push ourselves to do that. But there's a certain point physiologically in our actual biological organism that if the body is sensing enough danger, it's not going to let you do that thing. Or you're going to do the thing, but you're not going to do it as well or as clear or as great as you know that you can. And so when those things are showing up for you, when you're trying to record the video, but you're not speaking in the way that you want to, or you find yourself avoiding recording the video, there's really good information that our body is giving us, and we can work with our bodies in particular ways to bring our nervous system back down to sort of a zone, a sweet spot, a baseline, where then we can record the video from like a more aligned and connected place.
I agree with that completely, because I certainly in my lifetime have had physical reactions to fear. I mean, it's designed for you to get a reaction right in from the caveman days.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sometimes, you really nailed it. Like, people are reluctant to do video, and their heart kind of beats faster. They don't vocalize in a way that's good, and it has all kinds of effects. So I think it's a two-part thing that you certainly need to learn what you're saying, but there is a point too where you just have to kind of step into the fire and get the tools, but then you have to actually go do the thing, whatever it is, or decide it's just not your thing. That's okay too. If you're trying to be a basketball player and you're 5'10", maybe it's just not meant to be.
Right. Right. And I think too, as you're saying, right, mindset has a really important role in this, because of our mind-body connection, what we think in our brains physically has an impact in our bodies. So when we can also get a hold on and work with the things we're saying to ourselves and interrupt some of that negative dialogue that might be there from childhood or from our teen years, that then will help our physical body not feel nauseous or nervous or shaky.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I wanted to talk about a topic that follows so many entrepreneurs around year after year. I always think of it as like the puppy on your heels, and that is overwhelm and burnout. It's like no matter what they're doing, they can't get out of it. That puppy is always right there, right on their heels. So how do you prevent it to begin with?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think it's something in the times that we're living in is just very alive. We've so many of us navigating chronic illness, navigating pain, and all of those things really overwhelm and stress is a result of pushing and overriding our body. So for me, and the lens that I take in the work with my clients, is that it all starts with our ability to listen to what our body is actually communicating to us. Because there are so many instances where we are constantly ignoring our natural cues that our nervous system is sharing. And easy things to start with, just starting to pay attention and notice, is how many times during your week do you not go and pee because you just got to finish the call real quick, or you got to stay in the meeting, or right? So, or we're eating when we're not hungry, or we're not eating when we're hungry, or we're not resting when we're tired, right? Because of the responsibilities or these imposed have tos or shoulds that we're putting on ourselves. So the main way to start to work and prevent burnout is to have a relationship with what your body is actually communicating, because so many of us have overridden the cues for so long, we don't even know they're happening.
Right.
Until, as you were saying, like the universe sort of slaps us or our body starts to scream. So it's learning how to listen to the whispers and starting to make connections and then honor those. So if you're hungry, making sure you're setting yourself up for success in your week and your day by having snacks on you if you're busy and you're going from house to house and showing properties, right? Like making sure you've got water and you're hydrating. These things, as silly as they sound, these basic ways that we care for our body, this is the body that's carrying us around. This is the system that's allowing us to access our brain power and allowing us to show up in the ways that we want to. We have to take care of it from that foundational standpoint. And that is what prevents burnout long term.
Okay. That makes complete sense. So let me turn this around a little bit.
Yeah.
What if someone is hearing this today and they're already just burned out? They are fried. They're still pushing through. You're not accomplishing anything really because you're at the stage where you can't. How does someone begin to recover from something like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it really varies from person to person around how the burnout is showing up, and then also the realities of life. Like I work a lot with clients who are saying, hey, but I work and I have a family and this is just what I have to do and I have to keep going. And so depending on what your setup is, if you know you're burnt out and you're financially set up and in a position where you can take an extended time off, that would be my first choice. Like taking multiple days, taking a week, giving yourself a slotted time where you really can do nothing other than devote to your self-care and to what your body is asking of you. You might need to sleep a lot. You might need to reassess the foods you're eating. You might need to be able to go out and go on walks because you haven't had any exercise in a while. So taking large chunks of space is key. And for me, I homeschool. I have two boys. I have a 9 and 17-year-old. I'm running my business. Like I'm holding and juggling a lot of hats. I go away non-negotiable 4 times a year alone, not work related. And those for me are the places and spaces that I recalibrate. And I have other places in between, but I know having those dates on my calendar where I get guaranteed time to not be on for work, to not be on as a mom, to drop all the roles and the hats that I play and just fully allow myself to listen to whatever is going on for me. That's key. So if you're listening and you're feeling burnt out, figuring out a way that you can take time, longer chunks the better, if it's possible, is a starting place.
So like a week, if you could do a week for 4 times a year, and I love the fact that you guilt-free say alone.
Yes.
Because so many times we all think, well, I work all the time, so I need to take my kids or, my family with me. When let's just be honest, sometimes you just need to escape.
Absolutely.
With a guilt-free, especially if you have small children, but even if you have older children that are
or no children,
it just needs to be like a me thing sometimes.
Yes. And not work. I mean, and this took me a very long time to get in my system because I'm now in my 7th year of business. But at the beginning, I would just book a ton of work trips where I was speaking or coaching or being on or doing the thing because I felt guilty as you're saying, to take the time alone. But I've learned over time, I need those work trips too. Those are important. And I need time where I get to shut everything off in terms of shoulds, responsibilities, have to just listen to whatever my body is trying to communicate. There are so many ways that we dampen and temper our emotions throughout our days, that we're squashing how we actually feel, that we're overriding what our body is communicating to us. And so we need spaces and places whether they're a week or whether they're an afternoon, weekly, whether it's, for me, it's my hour in the morning where I know my kids are still sleeping. And that's the time that I get to be in my personal practices. Like, we need those places to let the steam out, kind of like an Instapot, right? Like, you let a little steam out, get a little bit out, and then over here, I'm going to get a little bit out, because otherwise we blow. Otherwise, that's when the burnout happens. So it's learning how to give our bodies time to really process, integrate, digest whatever's happening in our lives and in the world, because there's a lot going on, and create more space so that we have the capacity to show up in big ways, to be efficient, to be effective, to be on, and to be doing the work in the way that we want to be doing the work. We're no good when we're burnt out. We literally don't have access to our full brain power, because our body's physiology is working to show us that we're tired. So when we rest, when we build in these spaces for what I'm talking about, that then allows us to do more, which is kind of this funny contradiction.
I can see that. So Sara, can people do this, take a day or two, or do they need a whole week, or what's your recommendation? If you could just pick, what would be your recommendation for a person with a well-balanced life?
All of it. So, right. So regular times away where you're getting two or three nights in a row away.
Okay.
Right. On a regular basis. I offer these solo retreats for people to come, and I work one-on-one with people. And that I have people that do that twice a year. I have people that do that once a year. I have people that do that quarterly. Right. So creating those moments. And then you're looking at your week. Where in your week can you take a couple of hours, right? So making sure you have one chunk of time, an hour to 3 hours an afternoon. Again, no work, alone for your body. And then daily, where are the pauses? Where is a moment? For me, it's shower or bathroom time. I know I'm going to close the door and I'm going to be able to be in just my own self for a second. Or in between clients, I might step outside on my deck where my kids are, in another room, and take a few breaths and just let myself be a body for a second, right? So it's figuring out daily how to build this in, figuring out on a weekly basis where chunks of time coming for you. And then overall, like in a year, where are you getting away so that you're really being able to reset like a computer, right? Like if we think of our bodies like a computer, you can't leave your computer on 24 hours a day, all the time. It has to get turned off. It has to get rebooted. We can't have too many tabs open or it slows down the system. It's a very similar concept. We have to really care for our bodies to have the recharge reset piece so that we have the energy and the life force to be in the world in the big ways that we want to, especially if we're running busy, successful businesses.
That I know entrepreneurs, they get so focused on their businesses that they completely ignore their own personal wellness. So, and for me, I have to own that one, because once I actually took a two-week vacation once. The first week I paced the beach, but I've never been able to completely leave my work behind for a big length of time. And I know that's not a good thing.
Yes.
And it's not like somebody is standing over me like I have an employer. I'm a terrible boss. So,
I know that.
But I am getting better at that, at taking time, like you said, chunks of time, Fridays off, things like that.
Beautiful.
But I think you do have, whatever your practice is, whether it's some sort of meditation or mindfulness, it plays a crucial role in your mental health.
Absolutely. And I think, a key piece here is many people that I work with or come and see me can't meditate. They really struggle to sit down and get their brain to quiet or get their body to sit still. And so I really want it for anyone who's listening and like, oh, meditation, or really normalize, particularly for those of you who are identifying with, what both of us are talking about and the styles that we live in. It's very hard to take an activated body and sit it down and make it be still. So an invitation for folks to check out is I'm trained in a modality called the MELT method, which uses these little rubber balls and large soft foam rollers, and it works to hydrate your connective tissue system, which is this 3D fluid matrix that houses all of our muscles and bones. But every time you do a treatment, it calms your nervous system down at the physiological level. So you don't have to like breathe yourself to calm. You don't have to meditate yourself to calm. You get, for those of us who are doers, who are pacers on a beach, you get to do a thing, do a sequence on the roller, do a hand treatment with a ball, a foot treatment, and it immediately brings your body and helps train your body to learn that calming down and slowing down is safe. Part of the reason is people who work like us and are busy and are doers, that resting or slowing down is hard is because the body has learned that the more you do, the more successful you are, the busier you are, that's where we thrive. And so slowing down can register for some bodies as dangerous, which is why it's hard to do it when it happens. Your body's going to help you avoid that. So we turn to substance, we turn to food, we pace on the beach. I love that image. My husband digs massive sandcastles when we go on vacation. He's a solar installer. He can't stop. He digs 8-hour days making these massive structures because he can't slow his body down. So it's finding the practices and things, and MELT's one example where you can help your body learn that, wow, actually the slowing down, the pause, the rest is in service to my productivity. It's in service to me doing a good job at my work. Because even though I'd love everyone to take care for themselves, because we love ourselves and I want you to love yourself, if you can't do it for yourself, do it in service to your business, do it in service to your family, right? The rest, these moments, these spaces will make you a more efficient, effective human.
The way I managed that a long time ago, because I literally couldn't sleep. I had insomnia because my mind would just go in this constant loop. So I went to a formal meditation group and learned how to do that.
Beautiful.
And I tell people all the time, if you can't feel like you can't sit still, and that seems really woo-woo, there's an app you can download on your phone called the Calm app. It's 10 minutes. You can learn to train yourself to sit for 10 minutes and just be still. You'll be amazed it won't take so long that you'll find yourself that you learn how to do that. And then you're able to do some of the other things Sarah's talking about. I think it's like baby steps, kind of.
Absolutely. And even sitting outside with your eyes open and just watching nature, that's another way to be in a meditative state, because oftentimes closing eyes for people can be really activating. So there are lots of creative ways that you can find that work for you. It's all, working with someone like me or other kinds of practitioners, we all have great ideas, but I'm not in your body. You have to try the things and start to see what lands for you and what lands for your unique body and your unique needs, so that you develop a system that works really well, so that you can feel good. Like our lives we're not here so that we're in struggle and over efforting and burnout. Like, we're here to make impact and have, make change in the world and to feel good in our bodies while we do it.
I agree. And I think it's in this busy life where there's so much the digital world and so many things being thrown at us. You have to be very intentional about these things. It's not going to just happen, because you have too many distractions.
Yes.
But one thing I wanted to talk about was, what do you think the main things are that prevent people from ever reaching their full potential? Is there a list, or, is there a practice they can take? I know you help people with this, but what do you think holds most people back?
Lack of self-awareness. is the biggest thing for me, because we can't change anything. We can't move forward in how we want to be feeling or do something differently if we don't know what we're doing in the first place. And so much of our behavior is patterned from our childhood and from our ancestors, and we've learned just automatically the different dynamics we're in and how we respond in conflict. And there are just all sorts of things that are so automatic that if we're not slowing down to sort of start to learn how we show up, and how we show up is affecting ourselves and our bodies and the other people that we're coming into, we're not going to be able to access our full potential. So really the willingness to start to look at ourselves, which is not easy. Sometimes when we start to look, we don't really like all that we're seeing. And what I want to say is that we have an amazing system that we've been gifted with. Our bodies get to change. We're not fixed in one way. We can get really concrete thinking like, oh, this is just the way it is, or this is just the way I think, or this is just how I am. And we actually can learn how to get our brain to have different thoughts, get our bodies to do other things than they're doing, having different kinds of responses so we're not as triggered with our kids or certain profiles of clients. And so having the awareness is what then allows us to make change.
Yes, I agree with that. I know for so many people, they grow up, like you said, from things they bring from their childhood, the money blocks. You know, my dad was a general contractor. As a kid, I thought earning money is hard. You know, there's never quite enough. You know, we had everything we needed, but I could see the struggle in that small business. So I brought a lot of that into my world, but I did realize that I was doing that. But it's so hard to get rid of those blocks that come from childhood. Like you said, we don't always want to acknowledge that we have them, first of all. And you hear people say, I'm turning into my mom. Well, or I'm turning into my dad, who I didn't want to be like. But we have all this conditioning, all these stories. The stories we've told ourselves. They are so hard to change. I mean, Sara could say to you, what you believe this, but that's just a story you've told yourself. And you may go, intellectually, I know that, but how do I rewrite my story? You know, it's not that easy for people.
And for me, that's where my work comes in. That's where people then start to find and search out a somatic practitioner or somatic coach. You've done a lot of work in therapy. You know how you want to feel or what the patterns are, but it's just not changing. And so for me, underneath all of that is really how our nervous system is responding and working. And we can really learn how to integrate some of what we hold on to or some of what we've been taught that shows up in our body. And they come from ways we've been shamed as kids unintentionally, or like how our families have shown up, and those leave imprints in the body. And so our body has healing potentials that we can learn how to access and then clear and move through some of these blocks within our bodies so that the story gets to change.
So it's also interesting. I think half the battle is understanding why you are where you are. I mean, you really have to get that you are sometimes your own worst enemy, or you are, Trevor Marks said one time, my team came to me and said, Trevor, you are the cog in the wheel. You got to get out of the way if we're going to grow this business, you know, because as type A people, we want to oversee everything and we like it done the way we want it done. And so it's often hard to hand off things to other people. It just is. But once you recognize that you reach a point in your business, if you're going to grow and you're not in a totally one-on-one business, like you do a lot of coaching, some things you can hand off and then leave you space for where you can be in the flow to do what you love to do. And we all know when we're in that state, but how seldom are we actually in that state, given that we're working too hard, we're doing things we shouldn't be doing, we've got all these distractions. So it's a hard place to get to.
Absolutely hard and yet possible.
Hard and yet possible. Uh-huh.
Right, when we're making those intentional choices to shift.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, and I always read over people's websites and do all of this stuff. And one thing that sparked my interest and that I know is that creating more efficiency in your business will help you overcome a lot of problems.
Yes.
Because one of the, I have a friend who is a very successful entrepreneur, and she is a systems person. She said, if I have to do anything more than once, even book a flight, I'm going to build out a process around that. And I know she gets so many things done because of this, her systems and her processes.
Yes.
But how do you see that working? Is it specifically task oriented, or is it, explain that statement, creating more efficiency?
Creating more efficiency. Yeah. So I think there are all of these different lanes, channels, right, that then feed into our ability to have efficiency. So I think I love your friend's perspective. Systems are key. Having that foundation is key. Having support. I definitely 2 years ago was like, oh my God, I have to hire virtual support. I can't do it on my own anymore. Yeah. And so being able to see the systems, I think being able to have the spaces and places, as I was talking about before, in order to reset and recoup or work with practitioners. I always have a coach, and I always have a body person, a body worker that I'm working with to help me move things through my body, because that creates more space for me to be productive and efficient. And then for me, the biggest piece of my work is the efficiency comes from our physiology, our nervous system, our body working well. There's an automatic way that when we don't have all of our patterns and problems and thoughts, that our bodies are designed to work really well. We have cycles. If you're a female-oriented person listening with a womb, you bleed or have gone through that before in your past. And so we all have cycles where we have places and spaces for rest, where we have more times where we're more productive, and then we have times when we're slowing down. And so when we get our bodies to work really well, we can learn how to harness the cycle. And our cycle isn't, I'm just going to produce, because then I crash and I burn, I get sick, I hurt my body, I fall, I do all sorts of things. And so learning how to harness our cycle and really slow down when you're slow. And when I know that I'm in a more productive part of my cycle, I'll stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning. I'll ride that creative wave. I'll be in that expression, but that's certainly not going to be day 1 or 2 of my period. That time in my schedule is built in for my rest. So learning how to harness, whether you're female or not, a creative cycle or your own body's cycle of making sure there's rest and food and hydration and play and movement, and then also having periods where you're working and being in the world and being on, and then having times where you're doing less of that. All of that then provides your system to operate at its optimum efficiency.
Yeah, that's so good, because that's another thought, going back to listen to your body. We all have times, men, women, children, where we just need to listen to what our body is telling us. And you do have times, we all have those times when we're just full of creative juices. We can stay up late. We can do all these things. I heard someone talking about 14-hour days the other day, and I went, oh my gosh, that's not a sustainable model. You're going to get a slap down.
Absolutely.
So, but this has been so much fun. Really, I like to talk about these types of concepts, because so often business is like straight line, and the body and the psyche and all of that is just left out of that when it comes to being successful. And and I know that it's a two-pronged approach at the very least. But getting people to really figure this out is hard sometimes. So Do you have any final advice for folks before we wrap this up? I could just talk to you for probably forever.
Sure. Yeah, I think for those of you who are listening who are feeling like, well, I'm not ever going to be able to take space, or I don't know where that would fit in, I just want to invite everyone to get really creative around where moments could be. I'm talking about 60 seconds to 2 minutes of where you can just say pause to yourself in your head and feel your feet, and use that as a starting point, because really we want to help our bodies learn how to return to what I would call a baseline, right? When you are not stressed out, when you're not overloaded, and you're able to rest and calm down and just be who you are in the world without work, that would be sort of what I would identify as baseline. And I like to use a 0 to 10 scale. So 10 being I'm like super stressed out, overwhelmed, angry, anxious, a mess. And 0 being I'm calm, it's the middle of summer, nothing going on, I'm on vacation, right? Starting to get really curious for yourselves around, where am I a 0? Where am I? And if you're never a 0, that's okay too. Where are you lowest on the scale? And starting to recognize those places, because our bodies are wired to find danger. They're wired to be on alert. And so sometimes the calmness, the easefulness, we don't see it happening because that it's not dangerous. So we're orienting to the danger. So starting to intentionally notice, look at, wonder, where in my life am I a 0 or close to a 0? Is it in my shower? Is it in my bed as I'm lying down at night? Is it, I put my kids on the bus and I get to have my morning coffee without anybody around? Where are those places where I get just a minute of relief? And starting to prioritize finding those, because those are the breaths. Those are the moments, those are what's going to start to shift your overall system and interrupt the overwhelm, interrupt the stress. And that's where we have to start. If we're always going and always doing, we have to learn how to interrupt. It's not going to change overnight, but that's where it starts to begin.
That is such great advice. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Sara. And I hope everybody takes some of this great advice and puts it into play in their life, not just in their business, but in their life, because you will reap such great rewards if you do. And I've seen that firsthand, just taking some time. I'm getting much better at that now. But I will put the links in below so that you can visit Sara's website and reach out to her. But is there a preferred way, Sara, so that for folks to reach out to you?
Yeah, through my email, or you can also, on my website and email, but I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. So I'm all over everything. So any way you reach out, I will find you. But usually people get in touch through email or through my website.
Okay. And I'll be sure and put all that in the show notes. So thanks again, Sara. And thanks to all the listeners for coming out today. And please share this show and leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it. And I will see you same time, same place next week. Bye for now.